The next thing we have here is our veterans panel. We have the state of medicinal cannabis access for the American veteran and why science matters. I'm going to have our moderator, Mike Roberts, take it away.
Hi everyone. My name is Michael Krawitz. I'm a disabled United States Air Force vet. I served in the 1980s, and I'm the executive director of the group Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, you may know or heard the name. We're a very tiny organization, volunteer effort, working in many states and at the federal level. But we're the little group that actually negotiated with the VA and got the first VA policy on the books. Two things I just wanted to say real quick before I said anything else. I pass the mic off. This great group, and I'm just so proud to be here with them. All military veterans. And first thing I want to say was just something tying us to the last group, which I think is interesting. We're a stakeholder group. And veterans, military veterans have always been there. If you look at the very first pictures of marijuana on the scene in the 60s and 70s, you'll always see in the activist pictures a veteran, always in the picture, middle of the picture. Jack Herr, the Hemper, military veteran. Dennis Perone, father of medical marijuana, military veteran. So we were always there, but we didn't have a stakeholder group. And the stakeholder group formed essentially after we had a VA policy, because you really couldn't coalesce as a group of vets, under the flag of medical marijuana really too comfortably until we had a VA policy or something that created a dialogue with the federal government. And since then, the moms came up, and we seemingly have nothing to do with each other, but we're stakeholder groups. We're new stakeholder groups. And the two things I want to say about it is I just love being connected with the moms and cannabis moms, fathers, parents, and their children have been just an amazing force to be reckoned with that have changed policy and I get it, I'm emotional stuff, sorry. But have changed hearts and minds across the board, across the globe. And in the same breath, I want to thank Dr. Sisley, who's in the house here. Dr. Sisley has been thrown into this basically because of her work as a scientist with the first ever human trial of cannabis, the way it's used out in the field. We have lots of test tube science, cannabinoid science, a lot of knowledge, but we don't have much of this NIDA approved Schedule I studies. And because of her doing that, she's been almost given an ambassador status for the veterans, and has really opened doors again for us, and thank you so much for that. And I would just, the last thought on that is I would lament that in this forum, I would bring it up that I can't think of really any other stakeholder groups. We should have a lot of other stakeholder groups. One that jumps to mind is people that use it for psychiatric conditions generally. Post-traumatic stress brings us together, actually. The folks here, Patrick on the end, Anthony here, are principally involved in adding post-traumatic stress to their state laws, respectively in Oregon and Washington state law, under the medical marijuana conditions acceptable. I think that's the work that's yet to be done on other conditions that are considered psychiatric conditions, depression, major depression, stuff like that. I would definitely just use my moment on the microphone to point that out. That seems to me personally to be a deficit, and that's something, homework assignment, help others. So, but anyway, without further ado, I want to introduce everybody. I guess I'll start with. I don't know if we need to go with the program. We'll just go along the road here. But Anthony Taylor, next to me here, he's you're in National Guard. Air Force, man. I'm so terrible with personal details. I need a secretary to help me, and especially for 3 Air Force vets in a row here. So Anthony and I and Eleanor are all Air Force vets, and Anthony Taylor is the vice chair, right, of the Oregon Cannabis Commission. And as I said, goes back to work on so many different campaigns and issues along the way. and tasked him today with a question, from his experience working with inside a very viable and active medical cannabis program, one of the very first in the nation to be so strong. What kind of lessons have we learned, and what can we teach others, especially people that we've seen as underrepresented in that post-traumatic stress work that we did to add those conditions in the states, first responders and police, veterans and others that we know, suffer also higher rates than the general public of post-traumatic stress weren't very well represented. So what can we teach them? What can we give them in our experience that would help them is our question for Anthony to get started.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's pretty emotional for me as well. But Compassionate Oregon, which I co-founded with Cheryl Smith back in 1919, showing my age there. Anyway, back in 2013, when what had happened was in 1985, I was the first paid pot lobbyist in Oregon. And we didn't have much success in those days. Those were the days of RICO for cannabis, minimum mandatories, 3 strikes and you're out, and it just seemed to get worse and worse and worse. But we had some minor victories along the way. But then in around 2011, people that had kept going, I kind of went back to work out of politics, and they had asked me to take a look at some of the stuff, especially the rules around just being a patient in general, and maybe consider going back to the legislature and trying to help patients, because cannabis wasn't legal yet at the adult use level, and had been legal now for about 15 years at that point medically, but there were still a lot of issues, there's still a lot of stigma. And I had my card, and I was fortunate that my civilian doctor at the time was okay with me having a card, using opioids, and just, it was part of my medical treatment program. And so then when I switched to the VA in 2013, I just took my records with me, and I gave him a copy of my card to photocopy, and it was never really an issue. It wasn't understood very well. There were a couple of times when I visited my doctor and said, I'm just really having a hard time. It seems getting my feet on the ground, keeping them underneath me, keeping balanced. And the first question was, well, do you think it's a cannabis? No, probably not. But anyway, and so those are the sorts of things that I've had to deal with as a patient within the VA system here in Oregon. And I feel very fortunate to be in a state that has a solid medical marijuana program, cannabis program, that the VA recognizes in its own way by allowing their patients that are part of that program to use the VA system as any other patient. And the thing that always strikes me about this situation is here is a federal agency, the #1 agency for providing health care across the country to the veterans of this country that serve this country, and they're making accommodations. And the state programs, the states can't figure out how to do that. And they're not even held to the federal standards like the VA is. And the VA has charted a course. It's been slow, and it's been plodding, and it's been careful and guarded as best they can to advocate for treatment option that's helping their veterans recover from the horrors of war. Excuse me. But it's also more than just veterans. It's sexual abuse. It's it's police officers that roll up on an accident with multiple fatalities. It's these sorts of people that are within our communities that we never know about. They're suffering. You can't see it, but they're helped immensely by the use of cannabis. And so the stigma that goes along with this, the VA is starting to break through that. We only hope that the states can look towards those examples and start to follow it so that everybody that needs cannabis, whether they're a veteran or, first responder, or somebody that's suffered through domestic violence or abuse, and bring this very healing product to as many people as we can through this. And so through our work, Compassion to Oregon got PTSD added. We also got the card fees for veterans reduced to $20 a year. Excuse me, to $20 a year. So the other thing that we did was create a pathway so that residential care facilities and professional licensed healthcare facilities can become a secondary caregiver. So your primary caregiver, who's the one that's maybe growing for you or is getting your cannabis for you because you're a resident in a care facility. Now that resident can name the care facility and somebody within that care facility that will act as the intermediary, because in the state law right now, cannabis can't be administered unless you're a licensed healthcare professional. So somebody that's just an OMNP caregiver can't really go into the facility and administer cannabis. The doctors are kind of stuck too because they can't really write anything, any prescriptions, or all they can do is recommendations. But this will allow, we did this in 2016 where this can be designated, and now the rules have been written. So this will allow the primary caregiver to bring the product into the resident in the facility and put it in the hands of the secondary caregiver, and the secondary caregiver puts it into the system. And it gets administered in the way any other medications could be administered. And by these steps that are being taken by a couple of very important people in the medical program that labor with no acknowledgement of what they're doing, they've got chart notes for 17 years of dealing with cannabis patients that are in residential care facilities, hospice facilities. And so it's not just the veterans, it's all of these people that need this help, and we're hoping that the states will look towards the federal government in this particular interest as a way to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to read Ellen's little bio here. Ellen, if I can, it's like Ellen Brown is the founder of Cincinnati Seminars. Her passion for education stems from her being a teacher in the United States Air Force. Yeah, Air Force in the house. Where she received the Combat Command Nutritional Medicine Airman of the Year Award in 2010. After her service, Ellen moved to Humboldt County and began her career in the cannabis industry. She became the manager and lead cultivator of a dispensary in the Northern California, and then, oh gosh, I'm having trouble reading, sorry. Her budding business, Cincinnati Seminars has been flourishing, holding lectures nationwide. Currently, she's the director of cultivation for Canna Collective, Inc., a 100-acre hemp farm in Canada. And she specializes in sustainable cultivation of hemp and cannabis, best practices, dispensary service, and how to create a myriad of products. And Ellen is, easily one of the most dynamic, motivational speakers that I've seen in our range. So I'm definitely confident. And both these next speakers, both Ellen and Patrick, joined me on a little sub-project of our little tiny organization where we went to change the world, and we went to the United Nations. And Patrick actually joined me at the UN Drug Summit in 2016. Ellen just joined me in Vienna, Austria, where we had a meeting in December and produced this little report of 300 pages or so on cannabis and sustainable development. We have a few copies here if anybody wants a copy. But without any further ado, Ellen.
Wow, thank you guys very, very much. I'm a United States Air Force veteran, and my background is education. I became an educator in the Air Force, and that really empowered me to educate others because I realized the power of education. It starts with nutrition, but working in the cannabis field, I realized once you learn, you can teach, and then teach one, and they teach 10, and we'll keep teaching each other. My students go on to do amazing things. They create their own companies, or they work for brick and mortar dispensaries, or they become advocates, or they become their own best patients. So they're able to take care of themselves. They're able to grow for themselves. They're able to make a myriad of byproducts. And that's what I want. The information should be free. the knowing about your endocannabinoid system should be something that we're taught about in our school, just like our lymphatic system, just like your immune system. It's unique, it's not something that we can ignore, it's medical science. So I'm really about pushing the science aspects and letting everyone know you should at least have the choice. So in being an educator and being an advocate, I've taken those two things together, and I want to empower my students and veterans to go out and be that voice to help combat that stigma, because when you bring education, it's really hard to put doubt and have people say, well, no, cannabis doesn't work, when you have so much anecdotal evidence, especially from the veteran population. And we need more than just anecdotal evidence. We need those PubMed studies. We need to make sure that we have studies where they have placebos, where we're able to see exactly what works. We're able to use different cannabinoids to find out what might work best for PTSD or what might work best for certain kinds of trauma. And that's something that we just don't have in the VA. There's a real lack of access, and there's an even bigger lack of education. So that's where we all need to be united, because maybe you know a veteran, or maybe you know somebody in the VA, or maybe you know somebody in politics in your local town. That's the person you need to talk to. That's the person you need to educate. It starts at your kitchen table. So talking, hey mom, do you know what your endocannabinoid system, who is the patriarch or the matriarch of your family? Try talking to your grandma. Yeah, that's the conversation you need to have, especially as a veteran. By chance, are there any veterans in the audience? Awesome, thank you so much for your service. The thing about veterans is, I don't look the same as I did 12 years ago when I was in the service. It's really hard to maybe look at us now and know you used to be a service member. It's especially a little bit harder for female veterans that come out, because usually, a male veteran, if you see a guy with a high and tight, you know that he's a veteran, and they're always wearing those awesome baseball caps that'll let you know when they served, what branch they were in. But usually women aren't wearing those baseball caps. There's no real way for us to identify ourselves and let ourselves be known to each other. So just kind of thinking of ways for to include the female population and making sure they know that there's a huge sense of camaraderie. Something that I've been researching more about for other female veterans and looking into is military sexual trauma. And today I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, I should call the Portland VA. I'll reach out to their military sexual trauma department. I'm gonna ask them a lot of questions, because the website is kind of vague. It just says resources. And I've tried 9 times today. I've been trying since 9 o'clock this morning, and it just goes right to voicemail. Rings a couple times, goes to voicemail. Do you want to leave a message? No, I don't want to leave a message. And I don't want to have to keep calling you over and over again. There should be somebody there to man that hotline, to man that phone, the exact same way there is for the suicide hotline, because that sexual trauma can lead to suicide, and it can lead to veterans feeling isolated and compounding on those problems and those anxieties and that trauma that is already there because they don't have a voice. Could you imagine if you're a female veteran or a male veteran, happens to anybody, and there's no shame in it, and that's why these numbers are there, but you finally get the courage to talk to somebody, and you're ready to talk to somebody, and they don't answer, and they only leave a message. And then you're like, okay, I'll call back. I've been trying since 9 o'clock this morning, it's 2 o'clock. I've been trying all day, it's Friday. Somebody should have answered that phone by now, and I've continued to try to call. So we need to make sure that there is more attention brought to that issue especially, and I've been looking for resources, and there's more articles than there are resources, and that's a problem too. So talking about other kinds of trauma that people face in the military outside of the combat trauma, I think is something that needs to get brought to the forefront. And whether they're a male or a female veteran, just letting them know that you are here for them. They do have resources, that they do have a voice, that they, if the VA doesn't answer, I'll answer anytime, day or night. You call me, you call any one of us. That's what we're about. We are our own community. We're going to take care of each other. Everything that these gentlemen do, I am in complete awe of. When I found out about the 22 too many, I was, whoa, how do we work together? How do I support what you're doing? You're amazing. He's amazing. I went to Vienna, and then there's Michael putting me, I'm like, what? What are you doing? And he's putting together this UN summit and changing the world. I'm like, I know him. Thank you for your service. Again, so serving your country, serving your veterans, and continuing to serve the medical community is what we're here for. So, your service doesn't stop once you hang up your uniform. It's a lifelong commitment you make to your community to continue to work and empower each other. So let's be that united community.
that we, like, I guess, just any constitutional officer in our government, take an oath to uphold and defend the U.S. Constitution. And when you're out processed out of the military, they don't say, well, hey, by the way, your oath is up, you know? And we take that very seriously, I think. Before I introduce Patrick, I just want to say that you don't really have a way right now to really look into the box of our work. And you don't have a way to look into Dr. Sisley's work either. Both boxes are closed right now, but soon you'll know about both. And one is, you know, the landmark study of veterans using cannabis, smoke cannabis for treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress, a triple-blind placebo based study, FDA approved, NIDA approved, DEA approved, you know. And then the work that we've done is add post-traumatic stress as a qualifying condition under state law. We started with Oregon after the good experience in New Mexico, and California, of course, didn't have a list. And since then, we've added to virtually every state. We have now 31, I think, out of 32 modern medical marijuana programs have post-traumatic stress as a qualifying and I say that not to pat ourselves on the back, although we deserve some credit, veterans, for helping us, because it isn't a veterans issue. It's obviously an issue that covers a lot of different groups, because of the wide swath of demographics, and is you know, just a tiny percentage of us, or those patients are vets. So it affects a lot of people, and we're proud and happy to have helped with that. And the reason why I bring it up is because we had such great success. The reason why we were able to, in just 7 or 8 years, cover 30 states is because of the great success. It was very organic. It was driven by doctors, patients, caregivers, providers, and their families and the communities. And that's how we added post-traumatic stress in all those states. And Patrick picked up the mantle in Olympia, Washington, founder of 22 Too Many, and Marine vet, U.S. Marine Corps of the House.
The crazy one on the end.
And Patrick got tasked with, you know, his organization, 22 Too Many, is of course dedicated to raising awareness to and lowering, eliminating, if possible, the veteran suicide, which is at one point was 22 a day. Now I think the VA is lowered the number, but it doesn't matter if it's 1 a day. It's too much for us and unacceptable at this rate. Clearly, it's like a quarter of all the suicides, like 100 suicides a day, I think, and you know, a quarter of them are veterans. That for a little tiny percent, the 1% of the population, that's unacceptable. So I've asked Patrick to weigh in and talk about, you know, what it is that is being done and what it is that could be done to address that.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. It's working. Thanks for allowing me to be here. First of all, this is I believe, the first all-veteran panel to be at the Cannabis Science Conference. So please give us a hand. Mike is right. There's the work that we did in Olympia, I'll forever be proud of. We had delivered that bill to Senator Hobbs, who was also a veteran. We walked down on the floor, asked him to come off the floor. Adam Cooper, which was out of Senator Colwell's office, helped us write that bill, and we had to deliver it to him at that time. Another veteran was there with me, Kemp, Mr. Kemp. Corey Kemp, thank you. He was also there with us. Within 72 hours, the senator got back to us, said he would champion the bill. It came out of the Senate without one conflicting no vote, and they added TBI. Wow. So it was pretty awesome. First time out, we had a huge support network. Every single time I came out of a legislator's office, I would call Mike back here in Virginia. He would send over studies, and we were just tag teaming them the whole way through. We wore our red armbands that had 22 on them, and we were a force to be reckoned with. We were gonna be heard, and we were. And it was pretty awesome. So it's been 5 years now. We just celebrated the 5-year anniversary. The very first year we had our PTSD and Suicide Awareness March. Dr. Sisley came out, was a part of that. Thank you so much for sending us on our way. Your support along the way has been thankful. We're happy to have you on our side, definitely. So 5 years down the road, our mission is to bring awareness to veteran suicide. And so under that umbrella, there's a bunch of things that we do. And the 5 years down the road, the thing that we just started a few months ago, I'm really feeling most proud about, and that's the free clones. Our goal is to get 8,000 free clones into the hands of 8,000 veterans. We lose 8,000 veterans a year to suicide. We're going to flip the script and turn them into growers. The last High Times that came out, they did a short story about that and where that's going. But not only can they come to our headquarters and get a clone, they can get clones, seeds. They get walked into a room where there's full of used grow equipment, so they leave with used grow equipment for free. Everything's free. Every other month, we have a growing cannabis 101 class, basic cannabis knowledge, so they can come in and learn about it. In a few months, we're going to be having a cannabis hotline for veterans to be able to call in and hey, my grow is doing this, and we'll have somebody to answer questions for them. We provide $22 authorizations right now. If you're a homeless veteran, they're free. So when they come to our location, they can leave with all these different things. You gotta give a mission and purpose, and that's what we're doing. So, listen, this work is really important, you guys. We're losing 8,000 a day, and I like to, everybody knows the Vietnam Wall, and lots of people have seen it, but everybody knows about it. Listen, if we had a veteran suicide wall in Washington, D.C., it would be 3 times as long, and names would be added to it daily. Something's gotta change in our culture to make people care about this issue. 22 a day is ridiculous. And 8,000 a year is equally hard to swallow, you know? So,
Maybe
these states that have medical cannabis programs, suicide rates are lower. I mean, we know that it's helping, so we just gotta open the doors for them and get veterans involved with cannabis, holistic healing, and things of that nature. Thank you.
Can you talk, before I pull the mic away from you, Patrick, can you put you on the spot to talk a little bit about that idea that has been floated, like, you know, basically, it's a push under the rug, you know, basically, Patrick and I were talking about this, and others, you know, in our board were talking about this, and it just seems that if we can have, you know, a little bit of awareness of, you know, the wall is nice, but even just some awareness of those that have died, and give some recognition to the families.
If a bus full of drug dealers.
To the families who have given up a loved one to war, or to the military, or to the service, that this is a service-connected wound. And, you know, if you died in battle, instead of later as a result of the extended injuries of that battle, your mom and your dad would have this plaque on their wall with a gold star. So what could you do? You know, what was it, the White Star?
Yeah, there's a foundation out there that started, I found, the White Star family. So anybody who loses their son or daughter to suicide that was in the military, it's like the Gold Star Foundation. You have Gold Star wives, you have Gold Star mothers, brothers, husbands. So it's an organization that started a White Star Foundation for those who lost military members to suicide. So yeah, absolutely, that's a great way to recognize. I wish I knew the full name of the organization,
But even the idea, I just want to make sure you all heard that. And there's, you know, just generally totally unrelated, but also within our work, I want to make sure you've heard this. We've actually succeeded at the international level now. We've never been able to get our National Institutes of Health and, you know, FDA and those to really do their job, frankly. But at the World Health Organization, they have taken their job seriously. And when the United Nations asked them to look into cannabis, they did finally do it after many years. It took like 9 years total to get this done, 5 years total to review cannabis. And just this last year, they finally kicked out their result. And the result was getting cannabis plant material has distinct and quantifiable medical value. Now, you know, that is such a little tiny thing to us because we know a lot. We've heard about endocannabinoid systems and everything else today. But to the world, that's fundamental, a very, very big shift that hasn't even happened yet. But you're hearing about it here because the World Health Organization reviewed cannabis and put out that result, but the United Nations hasn't voted on it yet. So it's like the process is still happening. It hasn't fully unfolded yet. It hasn't become news. I'm talking about like tomorrow's news. And the vote, it will happen at the United Nations in March, in Vienna, Austria, at the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. And if we win that vote, which is the acceptance of those World Health Organization recommendations on changes in the drug control treaty system based on evidence. And the last time, if you want to consider it evidence, the last time evidence was considered on this was in 1935. Believe it or not, there's this entire international system that our national system, and just a side note, our U.S. federal law marijuana was, quick history lesson, 30 seconds. Timothy O'Leary, the guy you know for LSD, right? Well, he also won in U.S. Supreme Court, and the Federal Marijuana Tax Act was found unconstitutional in 1969. In 1970-71, they created the Controlled Substances Act to implement the treaty that they had signed on drugs in 1961. It was implementing the treaty that the Controlled Substance Act did, and it's been the treaty that's been the backdrop of all our trouble that we've had with the federal government. We can't reschedule marijuana. Why? Because of the treaty. We can't have interstate commerce in marijuana. Why? Because of the treaty. And now the treaty has cracks in it, and I'm the one that was able to tell you that. I think that's pretty cool.
I would just like to add another note to what Mike was talking about, and I want to take it back to the local level. Here in Oregon, when we first passed PTSD, added it to our list of conditions, it was, minorly used. Now it's the number 3 condition using cannabis, and it's gone from just beginning numbers 1-2% to now over 12% of all medical patients qualify using PTSD. These are important things because as we push forward, it's very important for any of your veterans in here that are using cannabis and you're having the conversations with your physician, make sure he's writing it in the chart notes. Because these chart notes are what give us the power down the line. Go, look, cannabis is working for PTSD. It's working better than Zoloft. It's working better than Valium and Vicodin and all those hospitals. So work at the local level. Make sure that your primary care physicians, whether you're with the Veterans VA administration or not, make sure that your primary care physicians are upgraded, get their knowledge updated so that, when they're confronted by a policy administrator that says, no, our policy doesn't allow you to prescribe opioids to a cannabis user, they can go, well, look, it's the best way to deal with this particular condition, and we need to change policy. So all politics is local, and that applies to cannabis. So work your local angles, work your local commissioners, your city officials, your primary care physician, your specialty care physician, and make sure that they know that there are still living patients in this country that were, part of the federal government's medical marijuana program, and they still receive 300 joints a month. And we have to keep reminding them that marijuana, cannabis is medicine, and we need to be treated as patients and make accommodations. I took a picture out in the hallway here a few minutes ago, and y'all can't see it very well, but it's where nursing mothers can go to nurse their children. We need to have these that are moving 6,000 cubic feet of air a minute for cannabis people to use just like the people that are using to nurse in. We need the privacy. We need accommodations as patients, not to be shoved in a smaller, tighter box, having to conform to IT systems that make us do things that don't serve our needs. And we just need to stay on top of it. Keep talking to your doctors, because that's the way we work it. That's the way we get better access to cannabis. And that's the way we make the Oregon Health Science University and legacy here in this state start allowing patients to get transplants, organ transplants, and not be considered addicted to marijuana because you went to one of their substance abuse disorder evaluators and you come back addicted to marijuana and are disqualified from an organ transplant program, and you gotta go to the Mayo Clinic. And how do you prove that this happened? Well, look at all the dead people that didn't get a kidney or a pancreas or a liver because of those policies. And these are the things that we have to do as advocates for patients and veterans and people that have been traumatized throughout their life, to make this available and make policy writers and the administrators break away from this stigma that surrounds cannabis patients. Because you can be a cannabis patient in this state, but you can't necessarily get quality health treatment because you're a cannabis patient. And that should change. We need to roll back. Those days are gone. Those days of giving the providers and the insurers and the employers a pass, exemptions, as it is in this state, they're exempted by statute from accommodating medical cannabis patients. Those days have to be over, and I hope y'all will help us bring those days to an end. Thank you.
Real quick, everybody in here knows a veteran. Call them tonight. Tell them they're loved, special, and important, please.
Do we have time for questions now?
I actually have very little control of it.
Well, thank you everybody for coming out.